Good evening, Sunday night. This week's episode of the Business 411 talk actually comes from Canada. I'm in a hotel room in Quebec at the Chateau Frontenac, and I'm having a delightful time, but I haven't forgotten talking about our course. So with that in mind, we'll do the usual thing. We'll look back on week 4 and look ahead to week 5 and what's coming up. And I think they really flowed nicely from one to the other. Because last week we looked at the question about finance and what role does finance play in the strategic process. And a lot of you really, I think, got to the point very early in the discussion. Is it a chicken or the egg question? What comes first? Are we limited by our financial capabilities, or do our financial capabilities necessarily become defined by the limitations or the expectations of the strategies that we develop? And as many of you noted, the two ideas are so closely intertwined it's almost impossible to separate. But the point is that so many things in planning, you can't plan what you don't have the resources to do. Or if you don't have the resources to do them, then why are you planning certain activities? Remember, at some point earlier, I said that it really can be done with the 4 strategic questions of what do you want, why do you want it, why don't you have it yet, and what are we willing to do to get it? Well, that's where some of these ideas of limitations and constraints come in. Because the whole idea is just not to fall into the trap of using old sayings all the time is you can have anything you want, you just can't have everything. And that's what strategy is all about. Starting to define our limits and define our goals and then match them together in a workable plan. So finance probably is the one area that I think we all share because it tends to be the most common measure of business success, the most common measure of business health. It is how people look at your successes or failures, like it or not. That's how we do things. And understanding whether we've made a profit, whether we're long-term profitable, whether we're making money, and there's a difference between making money and making profit. But the whole idea is financial success, financial health. Many people will tell you right away when you come in and ask them, why are you in business? Why do you want to go into business? Why do you want to be in a business? Are saying the simplest answer that most people will say, well, to make money. Well, that just shows you how common a value it is to people. So I thought it was very important that we at least dedicate a week to thinking about that. And not to let it dominate our thinking, but to just remind ourselves that it's probably one of the most important component parts of any business strategy and strategic effort that we get into. Okay, now this week we move into another area, which is what I've termed the PEST analysis. Right? We've heard of all sorts of terminology for it, but PEST stands for political, economic, social, and technological factors. Another word we use in a very specific sense here is your business environment or climate or the organic circumstances under which you're performing. And you see all those words are used in other contexts, and we bring them together here and use our own special meanings for them. But that's what it's all about. You are going to operate in an environment. You're going to operate in a community. You're going to operate in a culture. Well, how do you respond to the demands of that? Baldrige offers many ideas about this when you start looking at the voice of the customer, when you start looking at the idea of societal responsibility, when you start looking at being a good corporate citizen. Yeah, those are all part of it, but also competitive responses, agility is part of it. Many of the Baldrige principles really are going to surface right away when you start looking at how do you measure yourself against all these factors. What do I do? How do I respond to changing conditions? What are the conditions? If I don't understand the conditions, am I making some foolhardy decisions? This is what you need to be looking at now. And as your group work is progressing, you should start being at the point where you assemble all these ideas. We're in the 5th week now. Things should be coming together. I had to put that little video together a couple of days ago where I was getting concerned about the lack of progress I see in some groups. Make sure you're working hard at this now. Make sure you're working together. The whole idea is collaboration. Many heads are better than one in this respect. And you've got to understand that putting stuff together at the last minute is not going to produce a quality product. So tonight's message is pretty simple. Look at the environment that you're operating in. Look at the constraints you're operating under. Look at the conditions that exist for change. Look at what you can control and what you can't control. And then start putting your strategies into those different buckets so that you start having them assembled so that when you pour them all together, you're not throwing them into another big bucket where everything just flushes out the top. You've got the components that you can now mix together for a good strategic plan. Keep working at it together. Keep working at it individually, yes, and then contributing to your group. This is what's going to be important. Okay? So it's really a fairly simple message tonight. Constraints, possibilities, agility, response, collaboration, exchanging information, and understanding what the whole process can lead to as a collective effort instead of a collection of individual efforts. All right, so this is a week we spend, again, looking at these environmental factors, if you will. It's a great time to really spend a lot of concentrated time with your group. And as the week goes on, there may be more messages along this line. Okay, so thank you very much. By the way, have a good Memorial Day. To many of you active duty service people who are in this group, and we have several, and to the veterans and those out there, again, thank you. Memorial Day, I think, is a day that maybe we get caught too caught up in hot dogs, burgers, beer, and starting the summer and forgetting what it's all really about. So again, thank you to all of you for all you've done for the country and all those who've gone before us and done their part for this country of ours. And that's it for tonight. If you have any questions, several of you have gone on to the discussion, the Ask the Professor board, trying to get you back to you as fast as I can. And that's where we are. Okay, thank you and good night.